So today we're talking with Erica DiAngelo about trademarking, and specifically for real estate, and that whether you're a licensed real estate agent or you're a real estate investor, we want to talk about that.
Welcome to the Jennifer J. Hammond podcast. Jennifer is a licensed realtor, educator, speaker, and best-selling author. Jennifer's goal is to help you find your yay in every day.
Erica, I just adore you because I think there's just so many things that you and I have in common, and we're new friends. Yay! Yay! We may actually be neighbors someday soon. So will you tell a little bit about yourself so that they know a little bit? So today we're talking with Erica DiAngelo about trademarking, and specifically for real estate, and that whether you're a licensed real estate agent or you're a real estate investor, we want to talk about that. So she has an amazing resume. I'd rather you talk about it. Would that be okay?
Of course. Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me.
Yay!
So Erica DiAngelo. My law firm is called DiAngelo Law, and I do business in trademark law, intellectual property of all kinds, but trademark seems to be the biggest focus for most businesses and brands. So I founded in 2015, actually. I did my math wrong on how many years I've been in business, but so 6 years, and we're completely virtual. So I get to work with clients all over the country, all kinds of different types of businesses, personal brands, things like that. I'm based out of Tampa. I'm also a podcast owner. So I love sharing my information and educating business owners and learning from them too, what experiences they've had and what are their, tips for other entrepreneurs as well. So we can all share the knowledge.
And I think it's so important that one, it's virtual, and that people, anywhere can actually call you and get help. Because again, it's just so important. And so if anyone in Clubhouse actually watches this again later, we have the actual presentation, which I love just having visuals. I love Clubhouse for the audio because obviously I've been on radio for years, but I also think that having a few visuals really helps. So IP, what is IP? Let's talk.
Yes. So I also say this for the people who don't have the visuals, I have a guide that covers a lot of this information. If you guys reach out to me, whether you ping me on Clubhouse, Instagram, whatever, I will send it to you. I'll email to you.
Perfect. Yeah.
So IP, all right. Generally, it's the ownership of ideas or compilation of thoughts, which are protected by law. Now, you can't just protect any thoughts or ideas, but there are certain mechanisms that you can use to protect it and to really build assets around your brand. So those trademarks, copyrights, patents, and trade secrets. For realtors who are establishing a personal brand, it's going to be mainly trademarks and copyright. If you're doing something in addition to real estate sales, if you segue into training or coaching or some sort of educational, you might have some trade secrets when it comes to a specific methodology you use. But most of the time, trademarks and copyright, so that's what we're going to focus on today, trademarks.
Awesome. And also remember, we have a lot of real estate investors too, which again, they do educate, as well as the real estate investors. A lot of times they do have trade secrets if they're working in, say, short sales, or if they work in a specific type of real estate investing. So it is really interesting. In real estate, there's so many different ways to do real estate, whether you're flipping houses or if you're a licensed real estate agent. So brand strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those, quickly on those investors as well, there's a lot of information, finding the leads and everything that want to be kept confidential. And so that goes back to using contracts to protect your trade secrets and your intellectual property. List, contacts, all that is IP, whether people think about that in that manner or not. So brand strategy, yes. So I am not the marketing expert, right? I'm law, but it goes so hand in hand. When you are creating a brand, you want to protect it, but you want to start with a brand strategy, and you really want to know who you're talking to. if you just talk to talk, you're not really going to resonate with anybody in particular, right? So I like the method, the who, what, where, how, when, and why. And this really covers your avatar, your mission, your vision. I have some statistics too that I like to mention about why it's so important. So 77% of consumers buy from brands that share the same values as they do.
Absolutely. I think I probably have some great examples of that, because I mean, you find that people are drawn to, even when I'm educating, I find that people who are like me are the people who are in my class. And we have the same, as you said, mission, vision, we have the same values, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I know you have some great stories about that to show examples of sharing vision, right?
Well, I guess none specifically I have lined up, but I will say that in this world, when it's so saturated, there's only so many ways that you can differentiate yourself. And by really being true to your values and not just trying to be everything to everyone, that's what sets people apart.
Well, one of the things that made me think of was the different companies, like the companies that have a mission, like, and I'm trying to think of the shoe brands. Yeah, but they end up, buying shoes and giving shoes away. If you buy a pair of their shoes, and they also make sure that they give shoes away. And, just finding out, you want to have people who also share that same mission. And in real estate, the way that I think that really works is that we're looking for people who are looking for help. As real estate investors, we want to help them, with whatever situation they're in, and, make sure that it's a win-win. As a real estate agent, we're also trying to figure out, how can we be of service? How can we be the best advisor and person? And you end up, I believe, also attracting the people that have very similar values. Because if you don't have similar values, a tiny story is, when I first got into real estate, I ended up, there was different clients I ran in who just really wanted to break the law. And I was like, whoa, I am not the real estate agent for you. And I was like, wow, I can't believe people just blatantly, but again, I think you attract the people that have your values. So your brand strategy, it's really important that you make it clear what your brand is, who's your avatar, and what do you offer them? What's your mission, your vision, your promise? That's super important so that you can actually attract people out there. So I'm sorry. So continue with brand strategy. So, and where?
So where are they hanging out? I mean, how are you going to reach them? So I'll use one of my clients as an example. I adore her. She has a podcast. She has a personal brand that I helped her with. And she talks a lot about, female empowerment and boss ladies in the workforce and all of those things. And so who do you think she's attracting? Very successful professional women. But she's also doing it in places where they are. Where are they hanging out? If they're other business women, they're probably on social media, right? They're trying to get their message out. So that's where they're hanging out. But if you're reaching to a clientele who might be older, maybe they're more in an investment or retirement phase, that they might not be so active on social media. You might need to find them doing, speaking engagements at HOAs. I don't know, just hypothetical. But knowing where to talk to them is important, because you can have all your messaging lined up, but you have to be able to reach them.
Yeah. You definitely need to know where they're hanging out. So yeah, I love your brand strategy. Who, what, where, how, when, why.
Right. And the why becomes really important in this, because we all know what a real estate professional does, whether it's investing or sales, but that why is another key differentiator that's going to help you stand out.
Yeah, I think it's so important. And it's one of those things where, again, the branding side, it goes so important with the legal side. So now you're an attorney, so let's talk the legal components.
Right. So I love for people to start with getting the branding idea down. Don't get married to a name or an idea when it comes to the branding side until you do the legal side, but both need to go hand in hand. So the legal components for a successful trademark are distinctive, protectable, and not infringing on others. And there's two ways that we determine whether a specific trademark is going to meet all three of these components. And that's the trademark spectrum and a trademark search. So this is going to get a little in depth here. So if you guys are listening, like now is the time to take notes. Is there anything you want to say before we dive into the trademark spectrum?
I was going to say it's really important, with trademark to, take some notes. And obviously I know that you'll talk to people afterwards if they're interested, as well as, like you said, you'll email them that list that you have. So let's go into trademarks.
Yeah, definitely. So this does get a little bit technical and sometimes a little confusing. So definitely feel free to contact me outside of this live, especially if we run out of time at the end. But so the first two components that I mentioned are distinctive and protectable. And the way that we determine that is through the trademark spectrum. So from weakest to strongest, there's a sort of the spectrum is what it really is of strength of trademarks. So this weakest is generic, and then descriptive, suggestive, arbitrary, fanciful. If you're on YouTube Live, it's going to be easier because you can see the slide, but I'll repeat that again for those who don't have the slide. Generic, descriptive, suggestive, arbitrary, fanciful. So generic words are never entitled to trademark protection. So think like the best real estate office, or not even just the real estate office, right? And that's what you name your location. You don't get to protect that. It's just generic. And then we'll also go into why it matters, why you want to be able to protect these and have a distinctive name. But the next level up on the spectrum is descriptive. So that's more like the best real estate office or Tampa Bay real estate office or, whatever geographic city you're in. And those are difficult to protect. They could potentially acquire distinctiveness over time, but they're entitled to less protection than other names. In the trademark world, there's the main principal trademark register that people think of when they think of trademarks. And there's kind of this backup trademark register called the supplemental. That's where descriptive marks go unless they become, the DSW or Best Buy of the world who are able to say, yeah, our name's descriptive, but people know us so well that now we should be able to get full protection. So some other examples would be the breathable mattress or Donaldson's grocery. See how they give you hints at what it is, but actually it's more than hints. It's pretty obvious what it is. And using somebody's last name, like my practice, DiAngelo Law, it's descriptive. I mean, it's literally my last name and law, which is what I'm doing. So it's not the strongest name to protect, but the benefit to that people like is the marketing side. Well, you're telling people exactly what you do. I like to go one prong up to suggestive. That's what I consider the sweet spot because you're still giving some hints or some information to the people about what your product or service is. In this case, probably a service, but you're not just completely describing it. You're adding a distinctive component to it. So I'm going to give you some non-real estate related examples, but chicken of the sea for tuna, like we can take our brains and say, what is a chicken of the sea? Like it's really common, it's a food that we eat the most, right? That's tuna. Snowball for spherical microphones. It's shaped like a snowball. So it gives us a hint at what it is, but it doesn't necessarily describe it. It's not like round microphone.
And just also for anybody who's just joining in, we're talking about the trademarks and the spectrum from generic, descriptive, suggestive, arbitrary, fanciful, all these different things. And suggestive, when you said, really is the sweet spot, it made me think of coffee shops because coffee is probably a word like what you just described, like real estate, that it's hard, but you get a lot of ones that are suggestive. I was thinking about in Georgetown, we have one called Baked and Wired. And it's definitely baked good and all sorts of caffeine, coffee.
I love that. That's
And
a
it's
really
very
good
well known.
name. That's a really strong name because it does give you a hint at what the shop's about, right? But it's also unique enough that it's going to get full strength of protection on a trademark registration. So that's definitely the sweet spot. And sometimes what people can do is they can combine a descriptive word with something that's arbitrary or fanciful, which is a little higher up on the spectrum, so that so people have an idea of what the service is, but they also have a unique name. I like to use the example diamond. So let's just say you're diamond real estate. Well, real estate is the subject, right? So that's a descriptive part. But diamond is arbitrary. That has nothing to do with real estate, but it's a distinctive word. So that's going to benefit you from a marketing perspective. People are going to be able to find you. If they just type in Tampa real estate, because a lot of people think, oh yeah, I'll be the Tampa real estate. But if you just type that in, you're going to get so many different people. It's not going to direct them to you specifically. And it's also not going to allow you to get protection. So I like to, for most of my clients, suggested is where I recommend people shoot for.
Perfect. Okay. And so arbitrary, what about arbitrary? Real words that are unrelated?
Yeah, unrelated to the actual product or service. So arbitrary is Apple, right? Like that's the one that everybody thinks of. Yeah, Apple for computers. Apple is a fruit. It had nothing to do with computers until the company was built. And that would be kind of like diamond, right? My diamond example has nothing to do with real estate. I use hibiscus as an example as well. So it just gives you that one word or sometimes combination of words that's going to help you stand out. Now, the downside to arbitrary and fanciful trademarks is that sometimes it requires more marketing dollars. Because if you just stop it at Apple and you don't say it's Apple computers, you're going to have to explain to people through marketing what Apple is,
Right.
Right. However, fanciful words are entitled to the most protection. That's Pepsi, Exxon, Swell, Lululemon, Yahoo, like all major companies. But they made that decision knowing they were going to have a huge marketing budget to promote their brands. But now those brands are so strong that you can't get anywhere close to them. Where if you're still in the, suggestive category and definitely the descriptive category, you're going to have people who are more similar to your brands than being fanciful. But in the context we're talking about in real estate, I mean, most of the time it's geographic, right? So if you're like in a certain area, if you can prevent people from that area having something close, great. I don't think you necessarily need the full scope of protection that companies like Pepsi and Lululemon have. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. I'd rather you, focus the marketing budget on something different, right? That's going to get you those specific leads in your own area.
Okay. And so the trademark search. This is one that people talk about this one all the time. So if you wanted to trademark, this is really, people are constantly, well, what do you mean? What does this actually mean? Because I've heard so many different definitions and processes that are part of the trademark search. So
this is one of the areas that people have misinformation and confusion around a lot. And sometimes even my own clients are like, well, do I really need that? And it's like, yes, 100%. Because the next person I talk to probably skipped it on their own. And now they're coming to me saying, oh, I wish I came to you from the beginning. Okay. It's so important. So when we talked about those three components of a successful trademark, distinctive, protectable, and not infringing, the trademark spectrum was for distinctive and protectable, but the trademark search is also for protectable and not infringing. So we're doing the last two of the three key components. So trademark search is not a Google search. It is not a Secretary of State search. You can't just look up the LLCs or corporations in your state and think that's okay. And it's not even a test search. However, that's a really good place to start. So what a test search is, it's TESS. If you Google, test trademark, the search is going to pop up. And it's a really cool place. It's going to give you exact matches to what you type in. So it's a really great way to knock out names as you're picking one. But there are definitely considerations beyond that. So if you type in Starbucks with an X instead of a CKS, nothing is going to come up. There's no registered trademarks called Starbucks with an X. But obviously, common sense tells you like Starbucks would not allow that. That's not going to be a registrable trademark. And when I give that example, people get it. But when I explain to them smaller brands, they don't necessarily understand that the spelling doesn't matter. Okay. So if you have a name, the standard is sound, sight, and meaning equivalent. If marks are compared and they sound the same, they look the same, they have a similar meaning, like let's say Diamond Real Estate versus Diamond Property Company, right? Like those are two different words, property and real estate, but the context has a similar meaning for companies that use both of those phrases. So what the trademark search really is an advanced algorithm software search. So trademark attorneys like myself, we pay for the specialized software because we cannot do the same amount of options or variations that a computer can do. Frankly, I'd be there all day trying to get the same results that my system can get for me. So with that, that's when we review the results for the legal standard. And we go a little further and say, okay, we see this mark that could be similar, but let's really look into it. Are they still using it? Are they going to maintain it? Are they up for renewal? And maybe they don't have an attorney of record, so it's probably going to become canceled. All of those things. And then a little further, it's not, okay, I'm going to be a real estate investor. Is there another real estate investor with the same name? That's not the standard either. Sometimes financial advisors dabble in real estate, or there's companies that offer both, right? So if it's common for a specific company to offer multiple types of services, those types of services are considered related. So having that information not only allows you to weed out names that you're not going to be able to protect and make sure you're not accidentally infringing on somebody else, but it also gives you a starting point for a strategy. So, maybe if you're a real estate agent and you sell real estate, you also have a podcast and you also do coaching, but you find out that somebody has a similar podcast. Maybe you just drop the podcast name, but you still go get the trademark for the sales and for the coaching. You know what I mean? It just gives you that information that you need to be able to make an educated decision and not accidentally infringe on somebody.
Yeah. And and it is important because the infringing could be very expensive, right?
Oh man, it can. And last year, the time has been flying since the pandemic. It could have been late 2019, but there's a new ruling about damages. And so they can collect somebody that is accusing you of infringement. They can collect damages that include your profits of your business, not even necessarily having to prove that you took business from them, and that's the amount of damages they get. So those situations, things don't usually get that far in smaller businesses, but they certainly could, especially if you are doing it with knowledge and somebody says, hey, you need to stop, and you keep going. I mean, that's when you're really going to get yourself in trouble. But then what's the cost of rebranding? Who wants to do that when you've been building a brand for several years and you've gotten your who, what, why, how, when, and all that good stuff we talked about? You don't want to have to start that over.
No, definitely not. I mean, it's definitely a process just getting it all together. So doing this trademark search, and again, a search that an attorney does, right? This isn't something that anybody can just do. This has to be done by an attorney, right?
Right. So thank you for bringing that up. So you can order searches like that online, but the problem is there's no analysis. So if you don't have experience, and it should be done by an experienced trademark attorney specifically, not just any attorney, because what we might think of as, regular people, what's confusing is not what the legal standard is. And we kind of see trends in the trademark world and what they're ruling as being similar and not. So it really requires that legal analysis to be able to say, I'm going forward, not just like, okay, well, I didn't see anything, so I'm going forward. And that's what a lot of people do. They tell me they got a clearance search. Either they paid like LegalZoom or Trademark Engine. The problem is, again, there's just no analysis. They just didn't get an exact match. So some examples of what can be similar that we probably wouldn't normally think of as similar would be Blue Sea and Mar Azul in the same context. Let's say that's a skincare line. Those are foreign equivalents of each other. So they're considered basically identical. So one cannot exist with the other. Onyx Apparel, ONYX. It's the same thing as ONNICKS Clothing Co., right? So a lot of people would think that's totally different, but it's not. Like the variation in spelling, the variation in clothing co versus apparel, like none of that really matters to the trademark office. And you guys have probably, I'm sure you all heard of Delta Airlines and Delta Faucets, right?
Right.
Okay, so how do they both exist? They're identical names and they're big brands, right? So they should be entitled to a lot of protection. Well, the reason is they're in completely different industries that people wouldn't assume are related. Airline and faucets, no, they're just too far apart. So sometimes there could be identical matches, and that's not a problem. So you don't want to weed out names either that you really like because you think, well, there's an identical one, I need to move forward.
Right. That makes sense. And I think it's really, really important. I just want to make the comparison to real estate, what you're just saying about, an attorney doing that research for you and being able to analyze what you got back as results. Because so often now in real estate, people just go and they say, oh, I got a Zestimate and my estimate. So this is what my house is worth. And I'm like, no, that's a bunch of databases, and you need to be able to take the data that you get and be able to analyze it, whether you're a real estate investor or whether you're a real estate agent. You have to be able to take that data that you get and be able to look at it and analyze it and understand. Because, and there's just a perfect example is if you're looking at things that are sold, that might be what happened in the market 30 days ago or 2 months ago, but not necessarily what's happening in the market today. And so you can get completely the wrong information and go down a path of mispricing your home when you're trying to sell it and be very frustrated because you just looked at some data that you got from a Google search or whatnot. So anyway, I just wanted to compare that to real estate because, again, without having a professional look at that stuff and help you, you can really, it can be very expensive later.
Yeah, I love that example. It's so great that we have access to these tools and technology, and it kind of helps us do some preliminary homework, right? So we can make these decisions. Should I even think about going down this path with that name? Should I even think about selling my house? Do I even have equity? Those things that it's very helpful. So I do encourage my clients to start with Google, start with TESS, like I talked about, TESS, and then come to me, right? Do your own homework, but then listen, there's a reason that I do what I'm doing, and Google can't do it, Yeah. Same thing, with the real estate world. So I really like that comparison. It definitely makes sense.
Absolutely. And Linda, John, David, you guys know, Robin probably doesn't know, but if you guys will come off your speakers and let's all say yay together as I end the live clubhouse. Ready? Yay! Yay!